Hi, I'm Kirsten, and in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about urgency. What urgency is, what's actually happening to cause this strong urge to void, and how we may actually use some strategies to try and dampen it down a little bit. So urgency is when the detrusor muscle of the bladder, so we have a muscle that is part of that bladder structure, when it contracts, we have an urge to urinate, and we need to have that. We need to know when we have to go pee, when the bladder is full. But what happens sometimes is there are stretch receptors around the bladder, and they fill up and they say, oh yeah, okay, it's about time to pee. We need to urinate now. And it gives us a little squeeze, that detrusor muscle, and we think, oh, okay, it's time to go. But sometimes when we have frequency and we have urgency, those little stretch receptors start sending those signals a little bit too quickly, and we may have to go more often because of the urgency. So our little stretch receptors say, oh, we're full, but you actually may only have 100 mils in there, 150 mils in there. What are the norms? Well, we can hold a fair amount of urine in our bladder. It's pretty comfortable to hold around 300 mils. We're like, yeah, we can make it to the toilet. When you get to 500 mils, you're thinking, yeah, I really have to go pee. So we shouldn't really have a strong urge to void the bladder. When we only have 100, 150 mils in there, we should be able to hold it. So what happens is the urgency is what we call kind of a mind over bladder thing. We need to start creating tools or putting in habits that will start to lessen the amount of times we have urgency. Because some of you may actually be going to the toilet more than the norms. What are the norms? 6 to 8 times a day. How often at night? 0 to 1 times. Unless you're pregnant, over 70, sometimes 1 to 2. Urgency does tend to increase as we get older, but many of my clients actually don't realize that they're going to the toilet so often. They'll come in and they'll say, oh, it's just because I have a small bladder. No, that's very rare. It's usually because you have urgency. I don't know whether I've ever seen someone with a actual 200 mil only bladder. Is because your bladder is getting irritated. So there's something in the urine that's irritating it, and the bladder wants to contract to get rid of it. Or you've actually started, you might have had a little bit of urgency, so you go pee, or if you had a urinary, a bladder infection. If you had a bladder infection or a UTI, you may have actually started yourself up into a system where you go pee more and more often because it felt better to go pee. But this can get really in the way of our normal activities. We start thinking that, oh gosh, I can't make it an hour to get to the toilet in time if I want to travel, or I hate to go on a plane because I always have to go pee so often because I have a small bladder. It may just be because you're eating things that are irritating the bladder, or it may be because you need to start implementing distract and defer. So you feel a little bit of urgency, say, you know what, I have got 2 minutes in me, and you think, okay, I'm not going to go to the washroom. I'm just going to tell that bladder to shush. Sort of treat it like a child that keeps like, mom, 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 mom. So you're just like, no, not right now. I hear you. I understand that you need my attention, but I'm just a bit busy right now, and I'll get right to you. So if you can even delay it for 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, the urge tends not to last more than sort of 10 seconds, really, like the really, really strong urge, 10, 15 seconds. So you'll find that as you start to distract by, okay, I'm just going to go read this email. I know I have to go pee, or I'm going to read something on my phone, or I'm just going to walk over here and get myself, a glass of water. Well, that might be hard because it's really hard to hold your urgency sometimes with running water, but you get what I mean. You want to distract yourself so that you're not thinking about it all the time. And that will calm you down and give you a little bit more ability to hold the bladder. Why do we want to do this? Why don't we just go pee? Because, like I said, those stretch receptors, as you're filling up the bladder, they start saying, okay, well, last time you went pee, you went like at 150 mils. So now I'll go off at 150 mils, or maybe a little bit less, because I'm starting to get to 150 mils. And that's when you voided me last time. So they start sending a signal a little bit earlier. And then you have frequency, because you start to go pee more and more often, that 6 to 8 times. And then we do things like, well, I just won't drink as much water. But then the urine becomes concentrated, and that can aggravate the bladder also. You might find that if you have coffee, you feel like you have to go pee a lot. So caffeine is a aggravant to some people. It can aggravate your bladder, but it definitely is a diuretic and it stimulates. So most of us will have to go a little bit more often if we drink coffee. Some of us not, especially if you have a younger bladder, it's not such a problem. But as we lose estrogen, our bladders become maybe a little bit more sensitive to some of these triggers. So caffeine, alcohol, spicy foods, tomatoes, vinegars, those types of things. And so really we want to think about it as trying not to irritate the inside of the bladder by having really concentrated urine. So we want to try and drink around those 2 liters or so of water a day, or about 6 to 8 cups, sometimes 10 cups, depending on how busy or how active you are, of water. And you want to start thinking about, okay, when I feel that urgency, can I maybe just distract myself? So there are common triggers, and one of my common triggers was washing the dishes after dinner. Soon as I put my hands into that warm water, I would get such a strong urge to go pee. And my bladder's like, oh yeah, this is your time to go to the washroom. I'm thinking, I did not have to go 5 minutes ago. I know I went only an hour ago, so I definitely don't have enough urine in there to tell me that I have to go this strongly. So I just try and ignore it and keep on doing my dishes and get them finished. And honestly, by the time I finished in 5-10 minutes, the sense of urgency is much less. So that's not to say that you don't want to hold it all day kind of thing. Like my nurses and teachers, they tend to hold their bladder for such long periods. We don't want to hold our bladder too long. But if we're trying to get to that about 6 to 8 times to urinate, and we're trying to get around that 6 glasses of water, 8 glasses, 10. So we're trying to get that 2 liters-ish of water per day, depending on how active you are. Then, we don't want to be going to the washroom so often. So if you do have that urgency, just try to ignore it for a little bit, see whether it goes away, and try to allow your bladder to fill up to greater volumes.